our remarks since you're all being fed. But really, that's what it's about, right? You know, we're here today to discuss the Farm Bill and the effects on the Hispanic community and communities of color in general. As you may know, we work together with CHC, with the CBC, and KPAC to really take on this issue. And we have members of all three of our Tri-Caucus serving on this committee, the Ag Committee. Just to put it into context, it has been a coalition of urban members along with rural members that have really come together over the last couple decades to put together a farm bill. It's a coalition because we have everything from our rural areas where we do a lot of the growing of our food across the nation to our urban areas where there may be food distribution and processing. And I think the real key to understand is that food stamps are being utilized throughout all those areas. Poverty and hunger is rural in Appalachian, in the southeastern United States, in some of the rural areas of my district. Hunger is urban. We see it in East Orlando and in Kissimmee in my area and across the nation. And in some areas, hunger can even be suburban, where people are, like in my area, where the cost of housing is so expensive. I know there's probably some folks from LA and Chicago and New York here who know a little bit about that, where even if they are making a decent living, they're still struggling to put food on the table. And I can tell you, when we had the disaster relief come through to Florida after Hurricane Irma, we saw through the FEMA program thousands and thousands of people utilize the relief because when their power went out, their whole grocery list, their whole refrigerator was out of power for days. And it really gave me sort of a good idea of how quickly things can turn south on folks, how quickly a family that had a full refrigerator and freezer filled with food for the next couple months can easily lose it all. And we saw folks of all stripes, of all backgrounds come in, and it was a hugely successful program in Orange, Osceola, and Polk County. Now these values, this coalition to pass the Farm Bill, it's under threat. And we know why. For many reasons, but the biggest one being the proposed changes by the GOP House when it comes to the SNAP program, when it comes to food assistance. Let's be very clear. They stand alone on this and on these changes. The Senate Republicans, the Senate Democrats, and the House Democrats all oppose this push to try to reform food stamps in a negative way, in a way that'll increase bureaucracy. So a few things of what it'll do. One, they're going to mandate the work requirement program. Some states this worked for, other states it does not. In Florida we've had it for a while, but other states it's not going to work for them, particularly if folks who are on food stamps are not close to some of these work centers that they'll have to get training for. If folks are already working, and this is just going to take away from it. And consider it's an 80-hour requirement a month for a $130 benefit. When you consider that, 80 hours for a $130 benefit, you know this is really just a complicated way to try to kick people off food stamps. I believe they're using the word self-select. It's one of those ridiculous terms that they use here in Washington to talk about making it so hard that people will just give up. And then they'll go hungry. The issue that's going to affect Florida even more, which is why we will have more people kicked off food stamps than any other state, and we're talking about seniors, we're talking about children, we're talking about veterans, and we're talking about our disabilities community. So when we say people, we need to know what we're talking about here, and as you go and talk to folks, that's going to be critical. We, in Florida, because our housing is so expensive, have, in a bipartisan manner, made our eligibility up to 200% of the poverty line, rather than the 130. They want to mandate you can only go up to 130. And so that means that over 130,000 Floridians would be kicked off food stamps on day one should this pass. 130,000, more than California or Texas, two states that are bigger than ours. because of this issue of having so many folks just barely getting by. We also see that there hasn't been any bump in money for farm programs. We see so many folks across this nation. In Florida, we have a very diverse group of farmers, growers, ranchers. We have everyone from a fifth generation Anglo-Floridian in my district to someone who recently just came from El Campos in Puerto Rico or Colombia, developing ranches, to major Brazilian companies who've come in like Citrasuco and Chachacali to help feed America. We also have historic black farmers both in our district and around Florida, particularly in North Florida and in South Florida. And so these programs are going to hurt small and mid-sized farms that are counting on these farm programs. In addition, I was asked to speak about, in the committee meeting, my experience with the child support program we have in Florida, where if you ask for any benefit, you will be required to have the state take over standing for you and make sure that you're getting all your child support. You know, in theory, it's a good program, and it's helped get a lot of single moms and dads funding, have them get child support, and many of them, they end up getting off of these programs. But it makes sense in a state like Florida. In a lot of other states that are much smaller, that can't do it to scale, it's not going to make sense, which is why the CBO said that it will cost billions more than the program will receive. These workforce programs are going to cost billions of dollars more than those who will come off the SNAP program. So what we see overall is a reduction of over 1 million, potentially as many as 2 to 3 million people kicked off food stamps by some elaborate plot, some elaborate program, an increase in bureaucracy, and more people go hungry in the United States. This is why it doesn't make sense. It's unfortunate the Farm Bill has to be where Speaker Ryan is trying to establish a legacy of welfare reform, because the rest of Congress, Republicans in the Senate, Democrats in the Senate, and Democratic House members are all opposed to it. Lastly, our growers, our ranchers, our farmers are really starting to get the issue. This was exactly what almost killed the Farm Bill last time, and several people in Florida lost their elections and throughout the nation by getting involved in this. So now people are realizing, well, I may or may not agree with some of these reforms, but if they weren't in there, we'd have a Farm Bill passed already for the next 5 years. We'd have a robust amendment process. We'd have things working. We'd have Congress working. But because they want to establish some right-wing plot to have some welfare reform that's going to increase bureaucracy and make people more hungry, the Farm Bill is currently stalled, and help that our farmers need, help that communities of color, communities of poverty, communities that need have food insecurity will still be left without a remedy. So I'm very glad that everybody's here today. Welcome to Washington. Your voices are important, and we know that if we can all work together, we will get over this thing. We'll get the Senate to come back with something that we could all agree on, and we need to continue to highlight this issue. No one should go hungry in the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the history of the world. And so thank you for being here today, and welcome to Washington. Thank you.